Hello colleagues. I stayed up late one night, and an employee of one of my clients, with whom I had worked for a long time, wrote to me. He says he has a problem that is not documented and needs to be checked. At midnight. Check. Nope. Checked in 1 day later, because such terms are specified in the contract. And then I thought about what the ideal contract should be. And is it perfect for me? The legal issue of business operation is devoid of the romance of developing and building a business, but, unfortunately, this is an integral part of it, which absolutely all entrepreneurs face in one form or another. In short, the ideal treaty is one that was drawn up by your side from a position of strength. The term, position of strength, is rough, because it causes rejection on the weak side, and there is no desire to re-sign such an agreement. But I think it would be more correct to replace the term position of strength with the term position of a well-founded reputation. Most often, such an agreement is a public offer agreement, in which the party providing services prescribes all its risks and experiences, and the client either agrees or disagrees. With a public offer, there is no need for the parties to spend time negotiating the contract. There are no financial expenses for expensive lawyers and the like. As a rule, we do not read such agreements when registering in ordinary cloud services, but at the same time, we agree with them. But what to do if it requires agreement by both parties? I am sure that the approach to drafting a contract should be different, depending on the amount of the contract agreement, the complexity of the tasks to be implemented, and the deadline. Ideal contract, written on a napkin. It must be short. In my practice, the smaller the contract, the greater the desire of both parties to achieve a specific result of this contract agreement. It is quite clear that the more one side puts forward unacceptable conditions for the implementation of such an agreement, the more the other side will put forward opposite conditions. The contract must be approached with a certain reputation. The higher your expertise and reputation, the fewer problems with the contract agreement, the less need to prescribe any clauses, or each clause of the contract added increases the cost of the contract. The terms of the refund must be specified in the contract. Most often this figure is around 80%. 20% remain for operating costs that are associated with activities around the launch of work under the contract or its maintenance. It is also desirable to prescribe a return period. For example, we set a cash return within a month so that there is a short-term cash flow forecast. For me, the ideal contract is one that you can easily get out of. That is, the approximate process is as follows. The first stage of work is prescribed with a superficial assessment of the problematic aspects of the project. The contract is concluded, and a certain prepayment is taken. If any points and problems that cannot be implemented are found out for the indicated cost, then either a return or an assessment of such improvements to the next stage of work is offered. My businesses have never entered into and will never enter into agreements that spell out lost profits. They made claims to me for lost profits. The process is very unpleasant and very controversial. In my life, I have seen situations of legal trolling on this point. In most cases, where an NDA is prescribed, it is not necessary. I would say that contracts up to $5,000 should be regulated not by the legal side of the issue, but by the technical side. If a business needs to be protected by NDA on such small contracts, then such a business has high risks. For international treaties, it matters according to the legislation of which country the conflicts of the treaty will be resolved. If the contract is international, then you need to understand that you are unlikely to resolve the conflict in a legal plane on a small contract value, because lawyers worth $20,000 must cover the cost of the contract. In this paragraph, we are talking about a situation where the legislation of some relatively speaking European countries is taken as a basis. If we are talking about corrupt countries such as Russia, Kazakhstan, or Ukraine, then you need to remember the point of the possibility of easy withdrawal from the contract, that is, there should not be a significant liability for the parties, because such a risk can happen as a result of a banal bribe to the judge considering your conflict in the legal field. If you take a contract for the provision of some services, it must be understood that no matter how well the contract agreement is written, one party will still want to add some works more of those prescribed, and the other party needs to be ready to implement some of these works. In my practice, this approach makes the process of completing the contract comfortable and conflict-free. Because conflicts take resources from the enterprise more than the amount of the contract itself. Of course, all the points described are the subjective perception of one's own experience. Let me remind you that my businesses have always worked on short-term contracts. And I have not signed contracts worth more than $20,000, so these points are not an action guide, and you use them and apply them at your own peril and risk. Peace.